Well, welcome to our very first episode in a new series called Thought Maker. This is a project that I have been most excited about launching in 2021 with the rate of change that is coming to our sector as well as humanity around the world, and some of the most incredible international thought leaders that will be able to progress our conversation around some of the big challenges we have coming forward. Now, as you may be aware, New Zealand's vision has been titled Fit for a Better World. Yes, they are words, but with each word they have deep meaning, and with it bringing a blueprint that we have not yet had for an enriched future. By coming together to create outstanding products, of course, but sourced from our whenua, our land, and in relationship with nature. That is so much more important now than ever before, as disconnected as we have become from it. Now, with its focus on creating health from the ground up, and in a first of its kind, Multiscapes launches online on the 31st of May, running over 6 consecutive Mondays in an international online workshop that you can participate and register now for tickets to view online. I am so privileged to be at the table and be involved with this ongoing conversation that we will bring you in parts with Sarah's Country. However, this workshop is something I highly, highly recommend, as it is about the future of grazing in multiscapes, from thoughtscapes to landscapes. Now, the conference chair and head of the Centre of Excellence, Designing Future Productive Landscapes at Lincoln University, Pablo Gregorini, has convened experts, as I said, around the world like no other could on future theoretical and practical models of pastoralism. Now, Multiscapes includes cutting-edge ways of thinking about environments, dietary perceptions, health, societal demands, and issues relating to our interaction between agriculture and wildlife. And Pablo joins me in studio now. Pablo, firstly, thank you so much for allowing me to be involved, because this doesn't stop and start in this one episode, does it? It is a very large concept. So let's start around the concept of multiscapes. Could you paint us a bit of a chronological picture of how you came to the concept of multiscapes?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Sarah. I feel really humbled by your words. It's an honor to me to be here and try to start creating that dialogue between us and the land that I feel sometimes it was broken. The linkages between ourselves and the land need to be mended. So this idea of multiscapes started to looking at one place and one part of the land that we call place, that we farm, that we eat, that we live off, that we create wealth and health with it. But the map of the multiscape, if you like, start with our mind. Is that thoughtscapes, Thoughtscape is that geography of mind. And in that geography of mind, we locate ourselves, where we locate ourselves in there, how we go from a simple observer in that geography to participating of that. That is our own individual thoughtscapes, right? And you can link it to whatever, if you like. But if you start putting together different minds, different thoughtscapes, right, you inevitably go to that social scape, right? That society that is trying to reconnect through different calls to the land, right? So that social scape inevitably, through their needs, call that landscape, that waterscape, that airscape, demanding other ways of interacting with it. It is in that landscape where we, as human beings and other beings in that landscape, set our table, right? And just look at our menu. And that's what became the foodscape, right? But we keep talking about it, how to reconnect with our food and how our food connect to our land and how the health of our land connect ultimately with us And here come again, or not again, but the concept of healthscapes, right? So if the land is healthy, we are healthy as well. But there are several other beings in that particular landscape, if you like, right? That share those nutrients, that share that table, that share those remedies with us. For example, wild beings, and then we can even go on the wildscape side of the story, how we can interact in agriculture with the wildscapes, right? Is there any way to glue themselves or make them talk? So last but not least came, the political scape, if you like, as important as well. And I'm adding another scape, I'm aware, how this view of multiscapes, starting from our mind, that thoughtscape, ultimately flow to the politicians and policymakers and how they lay out our future, right? So we go from thoughtscapes, socialscapes, landscapes, water, airscapes, food and healthscapes, wildscapes, and political dialogues on policymakers that help us, hopefully, to reimagine our land and help us to reconnect with our land. Here, in this particular international workshop, we picked one of the process, right? We are a pastoral industry, and we picked the process of grazing. But we also graze in the internet, right? We graze everywhere. We graze the animal graze, or graze by us. So through this process, and talking and dialoguing rather than discussing, we want to create that multifaceted view, that multidimensional approach to that part of the land. We call it place, we call it home, where we eat, where we go for our remedies, and where we produce money as well.
It's like the disestablishment of the concept at the top of the food chain. Mm-hmm. And reconnecting, I love where it's come from, the Māori proverb, ko a te whenua, ko te whenua, ko ao. I am the land is me. Mm-hmm. Like the food is, food is thy medicine. Mm-hmm. This concept of actually coming off the top of a pyramid, thinking that humans are the ones at the top and everything needs to flow on from there. And actually the interconnectedness is what I feel this, the direction can be discussed in conversation at so many levels.
Oh, exactly. It's a pretty much it changed mindset, going from control to control nature, to make nature to do that, or control the land to do that. We are proposing that, and it sounds romantic, but it's not. It's just that approach that we participate with that. We are participants in this whole story. We don't have the lever, so somehow to control it, or if we do, we are proposing, let's participate. Let's go participation than control in these sort of things.
And as you said, it's not just a romantic vision. There is so many incredible thinkers around the world coming together at Multiscapes over the 6 consecutive Mondays over June and July. And the big question is always the how, and that is something we can discuss in multiple conversations. But the article that I have here, and just in reading from you, is that there has been a recent government focus on curbing the negative externalities of food production within national land management and planning bodies that has led to an undermining of the autonomy of pastoral farmers, also dispersed and isolated attempts at addressing different environmental integrity issues of livestock production and agriculture in general, and have led to the rise of competing agendas when addressing the complicated social ecology relationships that produce rural landscapes. It brings for me, listening to podcasts around the donut economy and the term in economics around externalities, and how externalities doesn't necessarily apply when it comes to nature. Mm-hmm. And we can't just apply our same philosophies to that. So when we want to continue to see things in our own agenda, in our own silo, how do we even begin to have a conversation?
Oh, that's one of the important things. Through this, we want to establish that dialogue. You'll see in our workshop, there are a lot of people, 40-something international speakers that maybe think differently. They may have different ideas. They come from different backgrounds. But we all agree that we want to establish that dialogue rather than discussion, see how we can create from here. What are our commonalities rather than our differences? And if there is some difference that put us apart, let's talk, dialogue, and build from there. The point is not to point fingers, you are good, I'm bad, I'm a scientist, you are not. The point is that re-establish that link, right? Re-establish that link with the land, like as you say, and the Maori sorry about that, says I'm the land is me. We don't need to force the land. We don't need to force ourselves to fit in a particular silo, right? We are trying to break those silos, right? We are trying to reconnect. We are trying to have a multiscape view, a more holistic view of the thing.
Yeah, and so therefore with, the institutional arrangements that are at play that make the incentive for behaviour change from both consumer and also the grazer is a multidimensional problem, but also needs a multidimensional solution.
Exactly. It does need a multidimensional solution. It does need a real systemic approach. Nobody denies that could be a systematic, right? But need to be a systematic approach. A systemic approach. A more holistic approach. There is no solution to one complex problem with a simple silver bullets. Nowadays, the society is demanding several things. Nowadays we are facing with wicked problems. Multidimensional problems. If I ask you, your computer is broken. If I tell you, would you go and get a hammer, right? So it's way more complex than that. So problems and the views of problem solvers need to be need to embrace complexity, and based on that complexity, we need to reestablish the dialogue, invite multiple parties, to deal with it.
And one thing I have learnt in human behaviour is that we shut down from overwhelm. And complexity is the hardest thing to communicate in a small bite-sized world of information we live in. And reading the paper, We Are the Earth and the Earth is Us, how pallets link foodscapes, landscapes, heartscapes and thoughtscapes, that we will talk in another episode to Professor Fred Prozonzo about, is that we have gone from being a species reliant on nature to survive, but we're so now disconnected that our ancestors would be extremely disappointed. But at that time, the information overwhelm didn't exist in their world to survive. To survive in this current environment, humans need to know a little bit about a lot. And so to know a lot about the basics of food and medicine and nature is a huge ask. How do we start to get connection around why the connection is needed in the first place?
Well, that's pretty much the purpose of this international workshop, right? Where we have several experts around the world that, like you mentioned before, they're going to go to the how. Okay, right? Just going from there to the how we do this, how we can connect ourselves, in a healthy environment, how we can design a healthscape, for example, how we can change our mind of pastoralism in some other part of the world. So the how is quite important here, that, the how reduce that complexity to action points to deal with that. And that's the dialogue that we want to establish, again, with people that see that reality or come from different points of that reality to a commonality of the how to do things and change that. First of all, our mindset, where we locate ourselves in that thoughtscape, to practical solutions to farmers and societies that live off the land. And in saying that, one thing that I like to say that in that changing of our thoughtscape, our mindset, we need to keep in mind that we keep saying we live off the land, but we are proposing, why don't we live with the land rather than off the land? Why don't we hear the land, what the land is telling us that she is capable, our Mother Earth is capable to do, rather than force her to do something in our own benefit?
Yes, encouraging women to do what they don't want to do is a bad move, and Mother Earth is exactly the same. Now, when it comes to grazing in future multiscapes, the drive and disconnect with people's diet choices based on value systems, when they don't understand how livestock grazing can be of positive when, as you explain, not through a single myopic objective of maximizing production and profit.
Yeah, well, those are strong words. That was a scientific article, but that was a metaphoric expression of how we need to change, in our opinion. And I'm saying our opinion, but it's not only my opinion. In inviting those speakers around the world, we agree with that, right? And that's why we are all talking together. And we have, for more than half a century, focused in that particular view, in, what I would call, it's a myopic view or kind of a tubular view, whatever you want to call it. And it's not an aggressive metaphoric expression, right? It's that simply, in the past, we have focused to single components of the systems or separated components of the system with one single purpose. For example, okay, I'm going to produce more grass or more feed to produce more meat or milk. If we're talking about the grazing context, right, in our pastoral system. So is that enough? Is that what we want? Or should we pay attention to what the rest of the society is saying? Okay, well, in addition to produce wealth and nutrients, right, wealth for the farmers, sell milk, meat, fiber as wool or anything, why don't we get into in a more holistic way of farming, right? Just taking care of several other things at the same time. It's like we were playing the Rubik Cube, right? We were only focusing in one single phase of that cube. I think it's time to think of, would we have won that game if we kept playing that game, the Rubik Cube, focusing in one single phase? No, we need to play that game trying to solve all the phases at the same time. And in doing that, we not only can win the game, we can keep playing. So that myopic approach that I referred to in that article, in conjunction with Tom Maxwell, a friend and a colleague of mine at Lincoln University, is like kind of a call to the arms and saying, look, the approach we have had so far has produced wealth. And there is nothing wrong with that. We can learn from that and base on that and build on that, right? Changing that single letter, wealth to health. If we start creating those multidimensional designs with our way we graze the animals, if we focus in grazing, we are going to create health. We are going to reconnect with the land. Money will come by itself. Again, it may sound romantic, but look at what's is happening now. You know, people are demanding that health. People are demanding soil health. People are demanding water health. People are demanding happy animals. You name it.
But and the thing is, as you said in that article, they're demanding health, but they're being served up a menu of alternative proteins from Silicon Valley in the way of fake meats, when, as you've stated, the most complete protein source is from animal source with for ultimate health, yet the demand is being captured by so many others.
Oh, exactly. And we've been deceived literally. Like Fred Provenza, my co-author, the article that you were referring to, we were talking about that we as human beings, we tend to be happy when we forage, when we graze in the aisles of the supermarket, right? We see different colors and we have that perception that we are choosing from several things. When in fact, if you look at the food alley, just to put it in a context, may have 4 or 5 ingredients that came from 4 or 5 plants. We've been deceived that, the artificial creation of a particular food or arrangement of nutrients artificially will fulfill our desires, right? Well, it could fulfill our nutrient requirements, but will that fulfill ourselves? Will that reconnect ourselves with the land? How we can relate a piece of fake meat or fake meal with the land we inhabit? If we drive through the beautiful plains of Canterbury or the mountains here, or my original flooding pampa in Argentina, are we thinking about eating a piece of that if we are eating a fake steak? No. So what is the connection we have with the land? If we don't have that connection, if we don't have that sense of belonging, what do we care? If the food, whatever we eat, came from a petri dish, right? There is no denying that, that artificial food, you name it, right? It may have a place, right? It may have a place. I'm not saying, no, let's go against that. But if you are talking about reconnecting, if you are talking about living with rather than of the land, we need to change that.
It's interesting, though, because the rise of alternative proteins, fake meats, fake milks, is exactly what you said. It's a single myopic view of how to connect with something society values, yet it doesn't take into account all of the other consequences of that.
Oh, exactly. And if we think about one of the scapes, the Foodscape, right? The act of eating is not only I'm going to provide my own body nutrients. It connects us with the place that food comes from. If we go to a restaurant or a particular beautiful place, right? In saying that, would you care or not? Yeah, you go to a restaurant where you can have a dialogue, when you can have a good moment. Oh, by the way, you're eating as well, right? And if you order to the menu, immediately you relate to that particular part of the land that the animal or the plant or whatever you're eating came from. Me as an Argentinian by origin, every time I go to a restaurant or I cook in my own barbecue a piece of steak, it takes me to my pampas, where I come from. It takes me to those beautiful rangelands where animals graze naturally. So immediately my foodscape transcends my mind and start inhabiting my thoughtscape, right?
So much to unpack, and particularly unpack around the how in the current situation we've found ourselves in on Earth with the financial institutions, political arrangements, and everything that we coexist and have to operate in and under, that to take away from the romantic vision of becoming more interconnected as we were with our ancestors so many years ago. So when we look at Multiscapes and the online virtual conference, it's coming up from the 31st of May, we're going to unpack over the next couple of episodes with 4 more of the speakers prior, as a bit of a tease of what you're in store for, and continuing this conversation. Love your feedback to our audience. Please send it into me via email. But how have you created it? There's 49 speakers I counted on the website, 49 over 6 consecutive Mondays. How have you framed that for people to work their way through that conversation to start with?
Well, I must say that wasn't an easy task.
Yeah.
And because it's international, we thought, okay, how are we going to fit it in a particular time in New Zealand that can enable the majority of the different countries to join us. So, like you say, it's going to happen in 6 consecutive Mondays, early in the morning in New Zealand from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that's going to be a minimal introduction to the speakers, to the sponsors, thank to all the sponsors that support this international workshop. Then each speaker is going to have a short session, if you like, between 20 and 30 minutes, some of them. And other speakers are going to be combined into a slot of 15 minutes. But the main point is, after that, we are going to split up in virtual rooms to discuss about those particular talks. And then convey in one big virtual room and start discussing about the generality of those different talks and how those different topics, or how the different topics in different scapes can get all together into a particular idea, and the how-to, right? How we can, change our mindset to make those things happen in reality in the land.
And my big how is, how do we take those conversations, and will you have at the table influences within the New Zealand system to take those ideas and run with it, to influence the outcomes on our political agenda, our financial institutions, etc.
Oh, definitely. We'll like I said, this is international, but we got a lot of New Zealanders participating, not only from the scientists and practitioners, but also we got the Minister of Agriculture, we got one of the leaders of the National Science Challenge, Our Land and Water, we got the chairman of Beef and Lamb. And so we want to influence not only science but policy makers as well, and people that are directly related to the farmer.
And the big thing is to encourage farmers and growers to participate and have their voices heard at the table just as much, because they get talked to a lot as well, don't they?
Oh, definitely. This might look like an academic exercise, right? But we encourage all the farmers, students, everybody to participate and have their voice heard in the particular topic, if you like. And the whole workshop, that's for the people that are in the land, right? So it's key for farmers to participate in here. So it is not only a scientific arrangement, if you like, of mind to theorize about how things could change. Yes, there's part of that, but we need that co-participation, that co-development, that co-design of what is going to be our future with everybody. It doesn't make sense if we were only a bunch of scientists and academics talking about farmers or what happened in the land.
We've certainly had a fair share of that in the past, but we do definitely, with the rate of change, need to have these conversations rapidly and co-designed, as you said, from all stakeholders. Hugely encourage everyone to come to the table from the 31st of May. You can do it online from wherever you are around the world. It is a New Zealand time for the New Zealanders, I'm sorry. Head to multiscapes.co.nz to find out more information on how to get your ticket to participate online, and I will be watching on every single one of those 6, and we'll continue the conversation post event as part of our Thought Maker on Sarah's Country. What I'd like from you, the audience, is to bring this to life. This is not a one-way conversation to you listening or watching. It is very much around continuing a conversation, so it's fluid. So I'd love your feedback to send in as we have these conversations under the headline, yes, but what about X? And send in how you can see certain things not or possibly working. Bring your view, bring your lens to this conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, because this is a continuing dialogue. This is just the start. It doesn't end with these 6 Mondays. As you know, there's going to be a book published with all the talks of the speakers.
Wow.
So there's going to be, we are going to have another special issue in a scientific journal as well. So because we have a tsunami of scientists that want to be heard, if you like, but we say, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. But again, it is very important for farmers, for the rest of the community to join us. This, although we talk about grazing and grazing animals and realities in grazing scapes, if you like, this involves all of us.
There you go. As you heard there from Professor Pablo Gregorini from the Lincoln University Centre of Excellence. I really appreciate your time coming in to kick us off on... There is no end date on how far the Thoughtmaker series can go. It's an evolution of thought and something that does not stand still in time. So I really appreciate you taking the time to listen in to this. And as I said, I'd love your feedback. Send me an email, sarah@sarahscountry.com. For the details, it's multiscapes.co.nz, where you buy your ticket online for 6 consecutive Mondays. And of course, we will continue this conversation in the next episodes leading into the event with some more of the speakers, including our international professors from multiple different facets of this conversation, to achieve what I really enjoy, this Māori proverb, which is ko ao te whenua, ko te whenua ko ao. I am the land and the land is me. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Haere rai.